I think I love you, so what am I so afraid of? Something I can't be sure of. And, oh, what's up, guys? Let's go ahead and review Scream 2. Scream 2 stars Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and is directed by Wes Craven. So guys, I had a lot of fun reviewing the first Scream, and then I watched the Scream TV series because it came on Netflix finally, and that's for another discussion. But then they just released the first episode of season 2, which I didn't even know, and I thought, hey, this would be a good opportunity to go ahead and review Scream 2. I was planning on doing it anyway. And Scream 2 is really an interesting sequel because Scream, the first one, was actually still in theaters when they started production on Scream 2. The first Scream was just such a juggernaut. It was a massive hit. It was actually in theaters from December all the way to May. That's how big of a movie this was. Movies don't do that anymore, really. I mean, back then it was Scream and then Titanic came out the year later. These were really cultural phenomenons. And like the first Halloween, Scream ushered in a bevy of knockoff slasher films that weren't nearly as good. But a sequel to Scream was inevitable, and I really love how this movie started off. It was a movie inside of a movie. The Woodsboro murders were actually turned into a movie called Stab, and so that's where Scream 2 kicks off. You see this young couple on a date, Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith, and they are going to this Stab movie. This is a pretty cool hyper representation of what it's like to go to a popular horror movie. And if you watch that scene, now it's not gonna be that crazy, but that is why horror movies are so fun to go to. The reaction you get from the audience. I really just ate that scene up because I feel like I've been in that situation before. But this was a really cool scene too because you got literally hundreds of people wearing ghost face masks. So the killer could be anybody. And right away, the first kill is just gruesome. You got Omar Epps' head against the bathroom stall, and then Ghostface stabs him through the other side. Right away, you knew that this was gonna be a pretty bloody movie. And it's kind of eerily creepy to see, you know, Jada Pinkett Smith getting stabbed over and over while the audience is cheering, especially when you consider what has happened over the past few years with The Dark Knight Rises. Theater violence is a thing now. Back then, it wasn't really. So when you watch that scene now, it is kind of creepy, kind of eerie. And honestly, that was probably one of my favorite scenes of the movie. And really, that scene sets up the premise of this movie. Sidney Prescott is in college now, and news of the murders at the theater come into play. And so all of a sudden, there is a murder on the college campus that just so happens to have Sidney Prescott. And let's talk about Sidney Prescott for a second. Really, Neve Campbell is one of the most underrated final girls out there. She definitely has a character arc, whereas in the first movie, she was really just a normal high school student. She wasn't like a badass or anything. But in this movie, she is dealing with what happened in the first movie, and you can see that in her performance. And right at the beginning, she gets a prank call, and it doesn't even faze her. She's so used to this by now that she can really take on anything. And really, this is Sidney Prescott's movie. She really holds the whole movie from the first, the second, the third act, all the way up. And I think that's a big part of why the Scream series is so successful, because it has really, really strong characters. And that's a good way into characters. There are a million of them in this movie. The first Scream was such a big hit that every actor between the ages of 20 and 50 wanted to be in the next movie. And there's a lot of really big up-and-coming stars in this movie. You got Sarah Michelle Gellar, you got Timothy Olyphant, you got Portia de Rossi, Rebecca Gayheart, who was also in Urban Legend. The list really just goes on. And most of these are really just glorified cameos. But that was a testament of the success of the first Scream. Everybody wanted to be a part of it. And that, to me, is one of the problems with this sequel. It's almost overstuffed. As a matter of fact, when Sarah Michelle Gellar came into the picture, she was such a big name that they would do anything they could to get her in this because Buffy the Vampire Slayer was such a big success. Also, I love the play on genre sequels in this movie. That's really what's cool about the Scream franchise. Every movie touches on the subject of said movie. This one touches on sequels, the third one touches on part 3s and trilogies, and then the fourth one talks about remakes. So it always gives you something fresh to discuss. and to have fun with, really. I like how they raised the discussion in this one of what sequels are better than the original, and that really is a hard question to answer because it's subjective. Is Terminator 2 better than Terminator 1? Some might say yes, some might say no, but you could have that debate all day, and it's a fun debate. And also, I gotta talk about Randy. Randy is such a cool character in the first movie and this one.
Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage, candy. Your core audience just expects it. And number 3, if you want your sequel to become a franchise, never, ever...
How do we find the killer, Randy? That's what I want to know.
And to me, he's the ultimate comic relief. Really, Randy is us. And I love that scene in the diner when he's talking to Dewey about who the killer could possibly be.
Oh, let's look at the suspects. There's Derek, the obvious boyfriend. Hello, Billy Loomis. The guy's pre-med in his pity me surface wound conveniently missed every major vein and artery.
So you think it's Derek?
Not so fast.
Because that's what the viewer is thinking throughout the whole movie. And he really breaks it down for the viewer. Okay, next up, let's talk about the third act, the reveal. If you haven't seen Scream 2, I suggest not watching from here on because this is where we get into spoilers. And I didn't want to do a review on Scream 2 without talking about the killer or killers. Timothy Olyphant was really at the beginning of his career. He had done the movie Go, I think, shortly after this movie.
Are you a virgin?
What?
Come on, Claire. Answer the question. Answer the question, Claire.
Breakfast Club, I get it.
If you've never seen Go, definitely check that one out because Timothy Olyphant is probably the best part of that movie. But in this movie, Timothy Olyphant is one of the killers. He plays Mickey. And Mickey is an interesting character because he wants to get caught. He actually wants there to be a trial and he wants to blame the movies for the killing. He really wants to be a celebrity and he'll pay the ultimate price to be a celebrity. And to me, that's an interesting character. And I remember back in the 90s and still today, they have debates about this, about if a horror movie can influence a person to, commit the ultimate crime, murder. That's what's cool about Mickey's character is he causes the audience to kind of create a discussion. And I thought Timothy Olyphant played him pretty well because he was pretty crazy. And also, Laurie Metcalf. This was really what I call the Friday the 13th moment of the movie because she was Billy Loomis's mother, the killer in the first movie. She really was Pamela Voorhees if you think about it. Pamela Voorhees was hell-bent on killing everybody that she thought had something to do with her son's death, Jason. And really that's what Debbie Salt was doing in this movie. But one thing that is really effective about the Scream movies, especially this one, is they keep you guessing all the way through. And I know I mentioned that in the first Scream movie, but even more in Scream 2. By the time we got to the killers, yeah, those two names did pop up in my head, but I was only like maybe 10-20% sure that it was them or anybody. There are a lot of moments where you think it might be Derek, Sidney's boyfriend, Jerry O'Connell. You just don't know, and that's what makes it great because at the end you are surprised. So I just recently watched Scream 2 again. I haven't seen it in quite a few years, and I remember there was always something about Scream 2 that didn't put it as high as the first one. Of course, the first one's really kind of a masterpiece too, but after watching it this time, I actually really enjoyed it. If I had to give it a con, I would say it's probably a little overstuffed, but really that doesn't take away from my enjoyment of it. And so for that, I would definitely give it a purchase worthy. So anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on Scream 2? Looking forward to hearing them. And as always, I will be doing a playlist for the Scream series, so make sure you come back and check that ever so often because I'm gonna be updating it as I do the rest of the series. And also be sure to check out my horror playlist. I have all my horror reviews and there's probably 100 of them at least in there by now. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Drumdums. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And Drumdum out.